phase of this. So let me just take a step back for a second. Remember that from the beginning, as we've been reporting here on the program for months, that Donald Trump and his campaign and the rest of the Republican Party, they always knew he was going to lose the popular vote, and always knew that a victory was only possible with a narrow win in a number of hotly contested swing states. And they actively laid the groundwork to be able to try and contest and steal those states, even if Trump actually lost them by narrow margins. But then what happened is that Trump lost by a lot. When the results all came in and they still aren't completely counted, it's a definitive rebuke. He lost the popular vote by almost 6 million votes, by 4 points percentage-wise. Lost the Electoral College by the same margin he won by in 2016, which he repeatedly called a blowout. All of that said, they just still went along with the plan that they had on the shelf. They still filed all these lawsuits, all but one of which has failed in court. And Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani are doing precisely what you would expect, spreading dangerous, completely fictional conspiracy theories and elevating cranks and grifters, and all of that was always bound to happen. But Mitch McConnell and Josh Hawley and Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton and the rest of these Republican politicians, who are no strangers to sanctimonious and aggrieved public oratory, well, they've all been going along with it, cowardly hiding behind the transparent excuse that the process should be allowed to play out, that you can go to courts and make your claim, and that's always been the path they want of least resistance for them to take. Now, though, that excuse is gone. So let's get serious here. Trump is 1-32 in court. They have lost 32 court cases in the 16 days since Election Day. And just tonight, a Trump-appointed judge, federal judge, ruled against the Trump campaign, saying it would be ridiculous not to certify Joe Biden's Georgia win one day before the state's deadline. The Trump campaign is admitting over and over in court that they are not actually alleging fraud. Even Rudy Giuliani told a judge, this is not a fraud case. Their legal strategy has been reduced to the spectacle today at the Republican National Committee headquarters in Washington, a darkly comedic and humiliating performance for all involved, with the president's last legal hope, Rudy Giuliani, sweating in front of the national media with some kind of undetermined dye running down his face, while Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell made truly wild allegations about how the election was rigged by communist money from Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez, who has been dead for 7 years. That's where we are. This is where we are. So we are now seeing the actual coup attempt. This is not about recounts that they are entitled to under law. It's not about barrages of frivolous lawsuits over this 100 ballots or that 100 ballots or signature matches. No, it is an attempt to use Republican loyalty to Donald Trump to subvert and frankly overturn the results of a Democratic election. They are just attempting straight up to subvert the will of the people and overturn a democratically elected government. We saw the first indications of this when the Republicans on the Wayne County, Michigan Board of Canvassers refused to certify the election before backing down. Well, then today, the Republican chair of the four-person committee, Monica Palmer, said the president called her himself after the meeting ended. And last night, both she and her fellow Republican board member, William Hartman, signed affidavits saying they want to rescind their vote certifying the election. They want to take it back after Monica Palmer talked to the president, even though that does not appear to be a real thing. I think that ship has sailed. Now, Trump has also invited the Republican leaders of the Michigan House and Senate to meet with him at the White House tomorrow, even though both have said they have no plans for any long-shot maneuvers aimed at the Republican legislature naming an alternate set of pro-Trump electors for Michigan. They're trying to just overturn the election and install the president in power. Now, I don't want to freak people out. This should not be giving you a knot in your stomach about the outcome. It's not going to work, okay? There's not some new ball game they're playing now. It is doomed to failure for a bunch of reasons we'll get into. But that should not diminish what they're trying to do. They're trying to do the thing. They're trying to overturn the election. Today, in an exclusive interview with Jonathan Capehart, which is coming up tonight at 10 p.m. on MSNBC, President Barack Obama pointed out it is not just Donald Trump who is to blame here.
Joe Biden's going to be the next president of the United States. Kamala Harris will be the next vice president. I have been troubled, like I think every American, whether you're a Republican or Democrat or independent, should be troubled when you start having attempts to block, negate, overturn the people's vote when there's no actual evidence that there was anything illegal or fraudulent taking place. These are just bald assertions. They've been repeatedly rejected by the courts, and I think I'm less surprised by Donald Trump doing this. He has shown only a flimsy relationship to the truth. I'm more troubled that you're seeing a lot of Republican officials go along with it, not because they actually believe it, but because they feel intimidated by it. And the degree to which you've seen some news outlets that cater to the right and the conservative viewpoint somehow try to prop up these bogus claims.
Again, that full hour-long interview coming up at 10 p.m. tonight after the triumphant return of Rachel Maddow, which I am looking forward to. But President Obama's right? Republican officials are on board with the plan. And if they are not, they have to speak up to let us know they are not. Trump and Giuliani are spouting horribly toxic conspiracy theories. They are running around, pouring gasoline and lighting a bunch of matches, and all those excuses about letting the process play out are gone now. Okay? So Republican politicians, Josh Hawley, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, are you okay with this? Are you okay with holding an American election and they're just ignoring and overturning the results? Yahoo News political correspondent John Ward, great reporter, tweeted, quote, "I have emailed spokespersons for all Republican senators about Trump's pressure campaign in Michigan and have not heard back from any yet." This is classic. We've seen this 100 times during the Trump years. It's the classic Republican, I didn't see the tweet, but for the end of the American experiment. A lot of people, myself included, have said, imagine if it were closer. Imagine what happens the next time around. But the fact of the matter is that 40 to 45% of the country, somewhere maybe 35 to 45% of the country, is getting information from sources that are telling them the election was stolen and fraudulent. And some of them are going to do things about it. Republican National Committee actually tweeted out this clip from their official handles today of Sidney Powell at the press conference earlier today.
American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down.
That was during her performance where she talked about Hugo Chavez and the communist money, and also that Donald Trump won in a landslide and they're going to prove it. Now, this is the RNC, the official organ of one of our two major parties, tweeting out the president's lawyer saying this. And we have seen over and over since the election what it looks like when people take this seriously. Democratic Secretary of State in Arizona has gotten death threats. The Republican Secretary of State in Georgia has gotten death threats. New court filings claim that the nationalist terrorists who plotted to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer had another plan, a plan B that involved a takeover of the Michigan Capitol building by 200 combatants who would stage a week-long series of televised executions of public officials, and also a plan C, and that was burning down the State House, leaving no survivors. That's a danger. The president poisons people's minds with lies and conspiracies. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer knows about these dangers firsthand, and she joins me now. It's great to have you, Governor. First, maybe we sort of start on that, your reaction to the new allegations and court filings about the extent of the plot that was being put together against you.
Well, I think it just tells you that words matter and the words of our leaders matter. I mean, the incredible vitriol that is being waged, whether it's against Dr. Fauci or it is against a Republican Secretary of State in Georgia or it is against a governor who's just simply trying to save people's lives. It is undermining our democracy, and these latest attempts around this election are just an extension of that. It is dangerous, and we really do need people of goodwill on both sides of the aisle who care more about our democracy than their parties to stand up and to say this is unacceptable. We've had a free, fair, and secure election. We need to respect the will of the people, and we need to certify these results. And we need to get the Biden administration to get started on this transition so that they can get their arms around COVID, something that this current administration has never been able to do.
Let me ask you about Michigan state law here. You've got the Speaker of the Michigan House, a Republican, the state Senate president, a Republican as well, invited to the White House. It's very clear what the president wants them to do is to just say to the Michiganders who voted for Biden by 143,000 vote margin, too bad, tough. We're taking that away and giving it to Donald Trump. Aside from how offensive that is at Democratic level, there's no provision in your state law that allows them to do that, is there?
No, and I'm glad that you opened the show by telling people this isn't going to happen. I mean, there's the vote margin actually in Michigan is now 157,000 votes. That is 14 times the vote margin that Trump won Michigan in 2016. 14 times. The State Board of Canvassers are to meet on Tuesday. They have one legal duty, and that is to certify this election so that we can send our electors in. They will be Joe Biden electors, and he will be sworn in as the 46th president of the United States on January 20th.
There was reporting tonight that one of the people on that state board, which again, like the Wayne County Canvassing Board, is a bipartisan board split evenly, is saying that he's leaning towards not certifying. How big of an issue is it if you get Republican officials at these various levels essentially buying into these completely insane conspiracy theories?
I think it's really dangerous, to be honest. The fact that our two highest ranking Republicans in the legislature are going to the White House, they're being summoned there by a president who's lost the state and who I wasn't invited to the meeting. I've not been briefed on what they're going to cover, but we're all assuming he's going to try to implore them the way he did these county canvassers to do whatever they can to not certify the will of the people of Michigan. And I think it's incredibly dangerous that they're even entertaining the conversation because we all know what the law is in Michigan. This is an embarrassment to the state, and it's an effort to disenfranchise the most populous county in our state, by the way, which also is the county that is home to the largest African-American part of our population. This has so many ramifications, many legal, many ethical, and I would advise anyone to tread very carefully because there could be much longer term problems for anyone who participates in an effort to undermine the election by a candidate who was on that ballot.
You know, one of the things that we're seeing, right, is there's a kind of breakdown in America about where people get their information. That there's polling out today from The Economist that says that 84% of Republicans say that Biden did not legitimately win the election. And, you know, we can guess about whether that's a sort of expressive anger at losing it or whether they really believe that. But I guess my question to you is that, you know, you are the governor of a state that it's a divided state. It's a swing state. You represent tons of conservatives and Republicans. To what extent do you feel like you are able to cut through all that when having conversations about the basic facts of the matter, whether that's COVID or that, like, Joe Biden did win Michigan?
Well, I think we've got our work cut out for us as a nation and individual states like Michigan. We are deeply divided. I think that this last 4 years has only made that divide harder to mend. However, I really think that Joe Biden as our president will be a big step in the right direction. The first speech he gave after it was clear that he had won in this historic vote was about doing just that, was about seeing the humanity in one another and being a president for every American. I really believe we have a lot of healing to do as a nation, and we have to seek to understand one another. That is our challenge, but that is also every American leader that should be the core of the work that they do. We are Americans before we are partisans. And here in my state, I say we are Michiganders first. We've got a duty, an oath to one another, and we've got to do everything we can to heal this divide. But it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take a concerted effort by many.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, thank you, Governor, for making some time with us tonight.
Thank you.
For more on the deafening silence from Republican officials, I'm joined by Brendan Buck, who served as press secretary for Speaker John Boehner, chief communications advisor for Speaker Paul Ryan. You know, Brendan, I had Henry Olson last night, who's a sort of conservative legal thinker and writer, and I started by being like, Henry, you're not a never Trumper, you're not a Lincoln Project, you know, you turn on the whole GOP, the whole thing's rotten to a core, you're a conservative in good standing, what do you think of this? And he said, this is nuts, this is ridiculous. So I want to start with you on that. Like, what do you, Brendan Buck, make of that press conference today and the claims that are being made here?
Oh, it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I've been alternating between finding this hilarious and being absolutely furious about it because it is so damaging to democracy, as you've discussed. As a Republican, you know, I'm still a Republican. I think that it's incredibly damaging to the party. You know, the party that is being told that elections are rigged and that their vote doesn't matter isn't Democrats, it's Republicans. And so, you know, the consequences of this are far and wide, but they're actually going to be felt mostly by the party that is leading this. And so, yeah, I'm frustrated by it. I think it's, as you said, doomed to fail. It's quite pathetic, the folks that they're trotting out here. It's really the bottom of the barrel. So, you know, I'm not worried. I'm just really concerned about what it says to voters. And when 77% of Republicans think that the election was rigged, there are real consequences to that.
What do you think about the role of Republican leaders right now? Because I can understand, I mean, I obviously don't agree. I think that's pretty clear with the strategy of like, we'll let him pursue his claims in court. But it's not going to stop. Like, we know this about Donald Trump. It won't stop. He will try to like yank the electors, and then they will do some contestation of the electoral college once the electors are named. And then there's a joint session that ratifies the electors in January, and they're going to fight on that. So the question is like, what responsibility do Republican leaders have to stand up and say, enough? This is crazy. Stop.
Well, I think the point you hit is perhaps one of the reasons why they don't, is because I don't think any of them think they could get him to stop. You know, I have a lot of experience with this, my time on the Hill. You can tell the president what the right thing to do is, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to sink in. I think we all know, they all know, that running out and saying that you know, he's wrong or that the election is over is not going to get him to stop. It's just not. But what it will do, obviously, is turn his ire towards them. You got to remember, politicians are going to act in their own political self-interest. And in the short term, it is in the political self-interest for Republicans to stand by the president. Something that people, I think, forget is that while I'm sure that their office phone lines are getting hammered with people criticizing them for their position, but I promise you, they're also getting hammered by their constituents who are saying, why are you not out defending the president? Why are you not? He says there's enough votes to overturn the election. What are you doing to overturn the election? And so that's the pressure that they feel. And so when they know that they can't actually they can't make him stop, right, and they know that he's actually powerless to overturn the election, the easiest thing to do is to just sort of wait him out. And I think that's what you're seeing.
I totally agree with that as like descriptive analysis. And I think you're right. It's important to remember there's pressure on both sides. But I mean, maybe I'm just an incorrigible moralist, but normatively, that doesn't cut the mustard. Like, Paul Ryan should speak up. John Boehner should speak up. The people that are not in public office should speak up, but the people in public office should speak up. They should say this is wrong. Like, that really does seem important to me.
Well, I don't think there's any question that it's wrong, and I think you're seeing more Republicans every day. You had Fred Upton just this evening, who's the former chairman of the committee, speaking up. I think that what Republicans need to understand is that while it is in their self-interest in the short term to stand by him, it is not in their self-interest in the long term. If you tell enough of your voters that voting doesn't matter, that elections are rigged, that democracy doesn't work, that is going to come back and bite you. And I think that's what they need to understand in the long term, that there are consequences for the party, for your self-interest, of course, for the entire country as well. So I think that as these states continue to certify their elections, I think Georgia will do tomorrow and have a couple more on Monday. You know, everybody will sort of understand and they'll move on. But they really have no incentive. Elected officials have no incentive right now in the short term to hit him. They just don't.
Brendan, it strikes me as you say that it's not the first time in your career you've taken a moral argument and translated it into an interest or translated it into the language of raw self-interest so that it gets a hearing. So I appreciate you doing that. Hopefully that will land. Brendan Buck, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks.
The president is actively engaged in a multi-state coup attempt, what else are you going to call it, asking state legislators to throw out Biden's victory and award him the presidency. There was one reporter who saw all this coming long before anyone else. His name is Barton Gelman, and he joins me next.
So sad. When you have people that deviate from the law of gravity.
The Lincoln Project.
The law of gravity says that what goes up must come down. The law of gravity says do not touch the eye of the stove, because if you touch it with your bare hands, it will burn. It will hurt. The law of gravity is something pertaining to the truth that if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, smells like a duck, odds are it's probably going to be a duck. That's the law of gravity. In ending on this particular note tonight, that is so extraordinarily sad, we want to compliment the commentator here in ending on the Lincoln Project that represents the openness and the fairness to a democracy that was intended to work not just for part of the people, but yes, for all the people.
Pointing out over at the Lincoln Project, pointing out who some of the Republicans are who so badly want to be president they can taste it. The Lincoln Project thinks it's important that we never forget who they are and how they acted during this era, how they sold their souls to Trump and Trumpism.
Washington is full of Republicans with big egos and bigger ambitions. Remember them: Rubio, Cruz, Hawley, Cotton, Lee, Haley. Soon they'll all be running for president. They're planning for it, even now. They'll tell you they're brave, strong, principled, conservative, but the reality is right in front of you. They're weak, spineless, cowardly, corrupt, shaking in fear of a mean tweet. Traitors to the ideas and ideals of the country. When America needed them to stand tall for a peaceful transition of power, they sided with the loser. When called to end abuses, they shrugged. When called to lead, they cowered. When called to speak the truth, they lied. Call them whatever you like, but don't call them leaders.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And so the Lincoln Project takes us off the air this evening. That is our broadcast for this Thursday night. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. On behalf of all my colleagues at the networks of NBC News, good night.
That'll do it for the 11th hour. We want to also thank you here at the Windmill Ministries at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, for being committed and being some of our viewers towards trying to
on behalf of all my colleagues
discover the truth, move on with that in which what we know to be the truth, and continue to be that shining beacon in the night that, yes, God intended for us to be. God bless America. God bless those who are standing up for the righteousness of trueness. And good luck to each and every one of us. And shalom.